What's going on, y'all? Big Rack Trust here, and I'm here today to give my full-blown review of South of Midnight. So a few disclaimers before we get started. I'm gonna try my best not to do any big spoilers, but I might have some, some plot point spoilers just to really show y'all or give y'all a moment that captivated me or really interested me. So I will put timestamps so you can skip through if it gets to the point, and I'll do my best to try and warn you throughout the video. And then also, like always, before we get into the actual review, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. I really appreciate everybody who's been supporting me and rocking with me thus far. So let's go ahead and get into South of Midnight. So when this game was first announced, South of Midnight instantly grabbed my attention. It was a game that had a really captivating, one of my favorite art styles that I've seen in animation. It reminded me of titles and movies like Into the Spider-Verse, Intergalactic, just sort of this colorful kind of almost clay 3D version animation that really just kind of grabbed my attention. So from the eye test alone, this game looked interesting. Then when I did some more research into the game and what it was about, it further captivated me. Not only did it have a unique and interesting art style, it also had a unique and interesting setting, being that this game was going to be based off of Southern folklore and take place in a fictional reimagining of Louisiana, which, besides games like Mafia 3, that's kind of a more realistic approach on that area of the United States, I don't think people have ever really used this particular setting and Southern folklore to create a fantasy action adventure game. I just knew this game would kind of be a recipe for success. So you have a very unique and colorful art style combined with a unique original idea and setting. The whole uniqueness of this game. A lot of gamers complain that we're seeing the same sort of games over and over again. We're not seeing enough creativity, or we're seeing Halo 5, Halo 6, Black Ops 6, all these, franchise games. We want new IPs. This is one of those games that is a brand new IP. So if you're able to put the culture war politics, because there's some people, again, because this game stars a black woman, some people calling this woke DI slop. If you take the BS culture war stuff and put it to the side, this is exactly what gamers have been asking for, a unique original IP. So it already grabbed my attention. I've enjoyed games. Some of my favorite games of all time include platformers such as Ratchet and Clank. You got, Tomb Raider and Uncharted. This seemed like a game right up my alley, but it seemed like it was gonna be more story driven than ever before. So I willingly gave it a shot, and too long didn't read a version of this review. I'm glad I did. This game was not what I expected at all. It exceeded my expectations. It lived up to the hype, and let's go ahead and talk about some of the reasons why. So like I already said, off the eye test alone, this game might be the most gorgeous game of 2025. It might be the best looking game that I've ever played. A lot of times I feel like developers and even gamers want to do super realistic, ultra realistic takes on certain things, but that's not what's needed. As long as you have a unique, colorful art style and a game that works well, there should be no problems. And I feel like that's exactly what Compulsion Games did with this title. The game is not super realistic, but the art style is just so unique, and the detail, it is everything I was hoping it would be in terms of a visual spectacle. All the environments, the character models are super well detailed. I mean, look at the hair on Hazel's mom, and look at the black hairstyles in this game. They got my man's waves looking crispy. They got my man's curls on point. Hazel's mom, lacy curls on point. Hazel's braids look very well detailed. And even just other characters in general, they look super detailed. There's not a single character or sort of character model that I saw in this game that felt like a throwaway or just kind of filler. The environment, the variations in the environment are just so wonderfully executed, and it legit feels like a storybook come to life in a 3D space or movie that you can actually play yourself. It was just an absolute joy to play. So from a graphical standpoint, it was just visually impressive all throughout. And before we get into the technical performance of the game, I just want to give you all my PC specs. I have an RTX 3060 Ti, an AMD Ryzen 5700X 8-core processor, and I have about 32 gigabytes of RAM. I had no technical issues. So basically, I have a mid to high tier PC. I'm able to play most games at high settings. The footage you'll be seeing, but also some of my own gameplay, and I played this game at very high settings with no issues. The game ran buttery smooth, even with the stop animation accessibility option they had in the game. So they have an option where you can actually turn off the stop animation during gameplay to give it more of a smoother look, but I kept it on. I turned it off initially, but I kept it on because it really did add to just the more uniqueness of the gameplay, and it still ran buttery smooth. So from a graphical, visual standpoint, excellent, amazing, colorful, wonderful. And from a technical standpoint, it ran smoothly. So let's talk about what I've seen a lot of critics kind of harp on, which is the actual gameplay. So the gameplay of South of Midnight, this is something that I've seen a lot of critics kind of harp on and kind of knock points on, and I don't think it's kind of fair, and here's why. So this is a very like linear game. A linear action adventure platformer would be a better description of this game. Think games like Ratchet and Clank, Tomb Raider, Uncharted. Now, obviously there's no shooting in this game, but you get the idea. You play through certain levels, you beat a few enemies in certain levels in certain spaces, and you kind of have like combat encounters, but the story's driving you, and you slowly acquire upgrades to improve your capability in combat. And at first the game does start off very slow, where you have very limited abilities, but by the time Hazel has her full, arsenal of spells and you can upgrade them, the gameplay and the combat actually becomes pretty fun to play. Stringing together certain combos, you can pull enemies towards you, can push them away. You have an AoE attack that Hazel's able to use, and you have a heavy attack that kind of charges up and kind of sends a blast to enemies that are in the area. You have a double jump kind of slam ability. The whole game kind of centers around this idea of weave. So with these abilities that she can use, she can also inflict weave, which basically makes enemies stunned and makes them more susceptible to damage, and increasing your damage output on certain enemies. And you can also possess certain enemies that can attack for you during a time. Is it the most innovative gameplay in the world? No. Is it solid? Does it work well? Is it smooth? Absolutely. And as you progress through the game, you see the evolution of not only Hazel as, a weaver, which is the spiritual kind of guide in this universe, but you also see the evolution in her combat. So a lot of people, when they talk about the gameplay, they kind of harp on the combat and knock it as a negative. While it's not the game's strongest point, it's not the worst thing about the game either, and it's not weak in my humble opinion. Like, I think it's more than serviceable. I think it's solid, especially when you take into consideration the boss fight at the end of some of these chapters. The boss fights in this game are some of the most creative, kind of innovative, like styling and just boss fights I've seen in any video game to date.
Before he gets up.
Bastard. Okay, Hazel.
No, the bell!
They really take full advantage of their creativity, of the art style, and each of them feel like super unique and varied, and each boss has their own sort of way that forces you to use different combat mechanics in order to beat said boss. So the boss fights were absolutely top tier, so I thought the combat was solid, but I also see a lot of people leave out, the platforming part of the gameplay. Combat is not all there is to this game. You spend a lot of your time climbing certain cliff faces, trees, platforming, jumping all over the place. Hazel has the ability to glide, she has a double jump, and she can kind of enter these wind tunnels that help her navigate certain areas. And she has a sort of like grappling Spider-Man-like hook ability that lets her to zip across certain gaps in the terrain. And it all feels like really smooth. The platforming feels tight, it feels responsive, it doesn't feel like you're cheated. Like if you miss a jump or you miss a platform, you fall off the map or something and you have to restart the section. It feels fair, it feels fluid. So I feel like a lot of reviewers, when they're talking about the gameplay, or just critics and independent content creators in general, they kind of leave out the platforming aspect and kind of just harp on the combat when they're talking about the gameplay. But if we're talking about the gameplay as a whole, you have really solid combat that has a whole, cast of different abilities that you can upgrade and interchange and use them for some pretty fun combat moments. There we go. And you have some pretty fun platforming. Part of what makes the platforming super fun is, like, again, the game is gorgeous, so it's fun to explore, climb, and look at the different environments that you're exploring and platforming around. It's just like, again, this game is just such a visual treat that it makes you want to explore every inch you can. Like I said before, it is a pretty linear experience, and you can go off the unbeaten path to find some more collectibles to upgrade your abilities and read certain notes to give you more context to the area. But it is a linear experience, and in my humble opinion, I think the gameplay is more than serviceable and it's solid. Also, this game has a pretty short runtime of around 8 to 12 hours. If you're a pretty competent gamer or you've played games like this before, it should take you around 8 to 9 hours. There's no boss or area I really got stuck on. I think I died only like twice in my playthrough, and I'm not trying to flex or anything. I just found the game to be pretty simple as long as you're paying attention. But you can't button mash. You actually do have to pay attention to the enemies you're fighting. I feel like the combat and the platforming make for a pretty fun, enjoyable gameplay experience. Now let's go ahead and talk on what's the star of this game, which is the story. So the general plot of this game is Hazel is preparing for a hurricane in a fictional reimagining of Louisiana in the town of Prospero. In the beginning of the game, she's kind of, resenting her mother for leaving her to prepare for this alone by herself, because again, like always, her mom is like running late from work. And they get into a little bit of an argument, and while Hazel ends up going to check on her neighbors, make sure they're okay. And then when she gets back, the house starts to fall apart and gets swept up down the river, and her mom is trapped inside. So basically, you're following Hazel in this journey to find her mom and be reunited with her mom. The general plot point of this game isn't super intriguing, but what makes the game and sets it over the top for me is the plot points in between and part of this larger story arc of Hazel trying to reunite with her mother. You see, Hazel discovers that she is a weaver that has the ability to kind of mend trauma and fix the pain of any sort of lingering torment. You see this sort of like plague that takes the land, and it's called stigma. And stigma are basically concentrations of like somebody's pain or regret or sorrows, and they manifest themselves in physical forms. They can be monsters that are called haints. These are like physical manifestations of that person's pain or the darker parts of whatever emotion that they're feeling. And then you also have these knots that are like larger concentrations that you have to kind of tear apart that reveal like the source of this pain. And as you're progressing through the land, Hazel essentially needs to get to her mom, so she has, her own personal reason for clearing this plague. But then she also encounters people that are causing this plague to like block her path. So she not only needs to clear to reach her mom, but she's also helping out some of these souls and some of the pain that these people are experiencing. And the stories that you encounter in this game are just, if you thought this game was gonna be like a, happy-go-lucky, colorful game where it's just super fun and happy all the time, it is not. This game gets pretty dark pretty fast, but it does so in a real way. There are themes of empathy, grief, loss, sorrow, regret that are just done so tastefully and executed wonderfully that it doesn't feel like cheesy or corny and like the game's trying to force a message down your throat. It's able to tell these stories using different stories of different people, and it does it in like a pretty varied way. Like Hazel is also following the footsteps of a weaver that used her abilities to kind of guide her people to freedom. And then you have traditional everyday struggles that people can relate to with topics and themes of, child abuse, struggling to make ends meet for your family, dealing with the loss of a loved one, things that everybody, I feel like, universally can relate to. And I think that's what the game did best. The writing is super believable, and they talk about these themes in a very mature, but like not too preachy manner. And they do it that really pulls on your heartstrings in certain moments.
He must have cried to the heavens. Somehow the tree took pity, and somehow Benji become the tree. But he'd never forget that the brother he'd loved had done this to him.
Wow. What kind of magic is that?
Yo, that's terrible.
What kind of man would kill his own brother?
And if you didn't get that from the scene, the voice acting in this game is just top tier. My personal favorite character, obviously Hazel, the main character, I think her voice acting is, top notch, but the catfish is like the star of the show. And I think most people who play this game can agree. He has this sort of like Cajun, Louisianan accent, and apparently the voice actor who plays the catfish is like a cowboy from Oklahoma, and you can obviously hear it every time he speaks. Motherfucker too happy, man.
What'd you see? Tell me all the juicy details.
Is this entertainment for you?
Well, fish ain't got no TV.
Another point I want to make too on the voice acting, no character that you meet in this game feels rushed or just kind of thrown in there. Every character you meet has their own distinct voice, their own unique story, and their own unique personality, to where every character you meet feels fresh and interesting and you want to learn more about them. So this game, while it is a short package and there's not, too big of a cast of characters, the cast of characters they have are each super interesting and pretty well fleshed out. And then last but not least, when we're talking about the story, the soundtrack in this game is unbelievable. This scene is a little bit of a spoiler, so I'm going to warn you. I've been trying to put spoiler warnings throughout the video to warn you when I'm spoiling like a major plot point, but this scene in particular, and I'm going to talk about it, it's going to be a little bit of spoilers, so fair warning now, but you're basically reuniting this tortured soul where she feels like, or she thought she lost her baby and she never stopped searching for her child. And she turned into a monster because of the pain she felt from losing her child, and her baby ended up turning to a spirit, but like could not find her. So Hazel, being the weaver that she is, reconnects them. And this culminates into probably the best soundtrack story moment that I've experienced in a game like this year, and potentially like of all time. Now, I'm saying a lot right now, but I just want to show y'all what I'm talking about. This moment right here is probably my favorite moment in the entire game.
Stay put. She might not recognize you. Let me protect you.
Mama will be there.
Oh, she's singing it.
Mama will be there in the morning.
Yo, I'm getting like goosebumps right now. That's crazy. Oh man, that's hey man, I'm getting a little teary-eyed, bro. I ain't gonna hold you. And I want y'all to pay special attention when you are listening to this moment in the game, right? You're hearing her talk about mama will be there in the morning as it relates to the specific story that you're helping like solve, the specific trauma that you're helping mend as Hazel, right? This is common with every single story that you encounter in the game. The soundtrack has been crafted intentionally and has been specifically designed for each section of the game. Each boss that you fight, each person that you encounter, each theme that you're exploring has their own soundtrack to fit that specific part in the game. And it just sounds incredible. Even some of the more instrumental songs just sound so like wonderful. And it just speaks to the level of detail that Compulsion Games put into this project. And I had an absolute joy playing this game. And I also just want to add this when talking about the story. It is finally nice to see a story about us. Like, it's nice to get some representation that was done so tastefully and didn't feel corny, didn't feel too preachy. It didn't feel like anybody was trying to make a caricature out of us or mock us. We didn't have the dreaded Killmonger hairstyle. Like, it really felt like they were trying to tell an authentic story using black characters as, you know, their source material and our history and stuff like that as their source material, but like while respecting it at the same time. Does that make sense? Like, I really feel like this game just, it felt nice to see representation. And I'm not gonna lie, it also felt nice to see these anti-woke grifters bitch and complain. I'm sick and tired of these people trying to steal our joy when this was honestly just a fun game that everybody, I mean, obviously as a black person, it was great to play, but I think anybody could play this game, the 8 or 10 hours of runtime that it is, and enjoy it and connect with the stories that are being told here. Like, these are very human stories that are well crafted, well written, and well voice acted. I think like anybody could enjoy. And it was just, the story was just phenomenal, y'all. I honestly could see myself replaying this on a harder difficulty just to make the combat a little more challenging, but just honestly to relive some of those moments that I experienced while playing this game. And I was happy that I dove into the experience and I was entertained start to finish. This is the conclusion, like my final verdict. What do I think about the actual game? Do I recommend it? What's my rating? I don't typically do a 1 to 10 or a 5-star, 1 to 5-star rating for games that I like playing. Because I think those kind of scales can be like kind of busted, especially when you have different genres of game and like different things that different games offer. I think that scale can be kind of broken. What I like to do is recommend whether or not the game is worth the asking price, so whether or not it's worth the price of admission or however you may play it. And I think this is probably one of the more accessible games of the year, being that it is on Game Pass. I personally have not had Game Pass before. I was able to play this game using a $1 14-day trial of Game Pass. And this is not a promotion, or I'm not sponsored by Microsoft before these people or these grifters come in and say I'm being paid off to review this game. But I think that Game Pass is a really affordable way to play games. You know, these games are anywhere from $40 to now $70 or even $80. And if you can play it just for, you know, the price of $1 for 14-day access to it, or a monthly subscription of $12, I think that's a pretty fair deal. Like I said, I think this game is super accessible. Whether you're playing this game on Game Pass and you pay for the subscription, or you use like the 14-day trial for $1, or you were able to buy, I think, the $40 or $50 that this game is going for, I think this game is worth every single penny. It's a nice, condensed, focused, 8 to 12 hour games. And I feel like this is what a lot of gamers have been asking for. This is a game that doesn't take 30, 40, 50, 60 hours to beat. This is an 8 to 12 hour package. It's not a big, expansive open world. It's a linear story that has some pretty awesome and tight platforming, a unique art style, and a really engaging, heartfelt, and believable and well-written story that keeps you engaged from start to finish. So I think this game was worth full price of admission. Like I said, whether or not you're playing it on the Game Pass or whether or not you decide to pick up this game at its asking price of about $40. And even aside from the price, some of my own personal praise and some more of my personal thoughts on the game, I think this game should legitimately be nominated for Best Narrative at the Game Awards this year. I think it has the potential to be in the Game of the Year category, but again, this is a pretty short and smaller game, so I'm not sure if it'll have that wide appeal that some of the other games that will be nominated will have. But definitely for narrative, definitely for art direction, and definitely for soundtrack, I think this game has the potential to walk away from the Game Awards to win multiple categories. These are my final thoughts and opinions on South of Midnight. Like I said, I think it's an excellent game that I think everybody should try at least once. I finished it in a weekend. I was able to sit down and like play with it, and I just enjoyed my time with it. And Compulsion Games, they now have my full attention, because what I've seen from their previous titles, a lot of people felt like some of those games were undercooked or were missing something. I did not get that impression from this game at all, and I absolutely enjoyed my time with it. So let me know what you guys think about South of Midnight. Did you play it? Did you see my Let's Play? I'll link it in the description box below. What are some of your thoughts on this game? Do you agree with me? Do you think it is a sleeper hit of 2025, or do you feel like it was missing some things in the combat department or other categories that you feel like could have been done better? Let me know in the comments. And if you made it this far to the end of my video, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. I really appreciate y'all, and thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a blessed day, and I hope you guys check out South of Midnight, because this game was awesome, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.